Lon Haenel here, and this is the Insights Podcast, where you'll learn about subscription marketing tips and tricks, meet industry insiders, and find a whole network of marketing professionals dedicated to growing their subscription business. I hope you're having a blessed day as you are diligently growing audience and creating sustainable subscription revenue. If you're looking for new ideas, improvements to old ones, or just to learn from other subscription marketing professionals, you are absolutely in the right place. We are so humbled today to have Richard Brown as our guest today. Welcome, Richard. It is great to have you on the podcast.
Hey, Lon, how's it going, man? Thank you so much. I'm really, really happy to be talking to you today and just hanging out with you for a little bit, man. What's new?
Oh man, we love the direction the industry is going. There's so much fresh innovation out there, and so glad you could pop over onto the podcast. And we just kind of wanted to chat with you, see what you're up to, and share your infinite wisdom with our audience. How does
I don't
that
know,
sound?
I don't know about all that, but yeah. I mean, if I can help in any way, man, that's my philosophy, dude. Just give into the universe. The universe gives to those who gives to the universe. So I just try and help and just provide that insight, of my little bubble and world over here. So nothing too
I
crazy.
love it. I love it. All right. All right. Well, we're gonna try to get into some of that wisdom. So first, Richard, if you could just give our listeners a quick 90-second recap or so of your career and background. I know you've done a lot, but just kind of give us a high level of where you've been and what you're doing right now.
Yeah. I've been kind of coined as a bit of a purple squirrel, and then I kind of I've done a lot of facets as it kind of like or focuses on as it relates to, just news media industry. I kind of came up and was raised under the news media industry. Currently I'm the senior director of retention, subscriber retention for the Daily Beast. Before this, I was with Gannett as head of digital subscriber churn. I've been on the advertising side of retention. I had a budget there about pretty good, healthy budget there to oversee as far as just advertiser revenue retention at LPI. And then I was with, I was with the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. I've been with Berkshire Hathaway, or I should say the Omaha World Herald, as a digital manager and then a director. I've kind of like been brought up in that news media silo. Primarily early in my career, I sold both print and digital throughout my career, but early in my career, I was kind of like deemed as a go-to digital, guy. I think it was just because I was younger and everybody wanted to do this, put that brand on me. But that's kind of how I came up. I was always taught to just, I had a lot of great mentors. Always taught to just learn everything, understand the business of our industry, which I think is very important, especially for the future and sustainability of what we do. And I never said no to an opportunity to learn, man. So I was just a sponge and just, I've been so fortunate and so blessed to kind of like just, be in the positions that I have been, just to, engage, give back, and do what I can to help organizations. So for sure.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. All right. So it sounds like you're a busy guy. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do outside of work or in your spare time?
I'm a dad, so I love spending time with my boys. And also too, just I'm always usually kind of like just helping out with like little organizations, small causes, things like that. That just kind of I'm more or less prolific to the ideologies of just like development of people and others and communities and stuff like that. So I found out just early in my life, man, that I loved helping people, and it wasn't necessarily it wasn't for vanity. It wasn't for I was always want to be like, look, man, I never need my name on a bridge. I just want to build a bridge to help people get across rivers and turbulent terrain. So that's what I like to do. And I'm also always doing house projects and all that stuff, and all that fun,
Well, awesome.
do list.
Well, thanks. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So Richard, what is your greatest passion in the news media business? I mean, why do you get up in the morning? What's your purpose? I mean, why is it that Richard Brown is in the media business, the news media business right now? I mean, why do you do what you do?
Honestly, I do. I have this kind of affinity for what we do. We're kind of, I always tell people that we're kind of like civil servants in a way, whereas like, our duty is to kind of be, the keepers of the chronicles of history, right? So, I've had so many great opportunities to meet so many, different people who are basically, doing what they do, getting up every day, to your point, to deliver content to you, to help you as a person, a human. I don't say consumer, sometimes I say human, just consume and digest and kind of process what's going on in our world, let alone our communities, but also too just our world. And I think that, it's got like a factor of regalness. I get it as far as legacy, but I'm passionate about, you know, that idea, because I mean it's not only, for the sacred mental health of just people, but also too you're just a community steward, so you always want to just make sure that you're doing your best, so it just fits up and aligns with my overall personal objective and outlook. And I just happen to be one that's, I use my skills, for this, and I try and be analytical, even though I miss stuff sometimes. I try and be strategic and process things and be somewhat pragmatic about how I approach things. But you also want to implement to do better for the greater good of whatever the case might be. I don't care if it's one person or if it's a million people, man.
Yeah,
You do what
yeah.
you can and just make a difference. So.
Right, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. So obviously being good stewards, taking care of, where, the news media is today, especially the paid news media, um, and the fact that you're quite a retention guru, Richard. Many of us read your column every month in E&P and E&P magazine. Just some really impressive stuff, impressive ideas. Just wondering if you could share, what you could. I mean, obviously, with our listeners on how similar or different are your retention funnels, than maybe what you work on at the Daily Beast versus in a traditional newspaper setting. Wondering if you could talk about that.
Well, oddly enough, I mean, it's really, to be honest with you, from what I've experienced, there's not really like, I don't want to say like there's a difference. I would just say that it's more or less about two things for me: the full fleshness of the vessels, or the full fleshness of the touch points for every trigger within a funnel. Um, and I always try and break it up just for, or compartmentalize like that journey, just to kind of help focuses, right? So the idea of, everybody, first, onboarding, right? Somebody like, a trigger is, new
Mhm.
subscribers. So what is that journey that they go through? Then you kind of have what I kind of like define as like this re-engagement period. Re-engagement can be anywhere from like 30 days to 11 months, right? Just depending on how long that subscriber's there. But you have to kind of make sure that you're doing whatever you can to not only kind of guide them into your benefits and features and all that stuff, but also to um, that they understand and have some type of connectivity to your content, which I'll talk about in a second. Then you have like that churn phase of when you're kind of like sending out renewal notices and what to do when people opt out, or kind of like want to change stuff. And then you have the grace period, which is very important. And you have win back. So those are kind of like how I compartmentalize.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
from there, you just kind of like are like a doctor or surgeon, right? You're just kind of like trying to figure out, okay, what should be there, what could be there, yada, yada, yada. And
Mhm.
then you just kind of like flesh those out. You can use best practices. You can do a lot of trial and error. You can kind of like, okay, I like this, I didn't like this. I think that if that's kind of like the concrete, right, the foundation of what you do, the thing that kind of gets missed a lot, which I always kind of like tell people, is actually twofold. One, um, I'm a personal believer in the future of influential content, meaning that I think that we're in this era where people not only, they're not necessarily, unaware of the content that they need to know. They're just choosing more, I think, to, read and listen to the content that they want to know.
Mhm.
And I think that's a bit of you know, a paradigm that we're in right now, where it's like, it's, I know what's, I know what is my community. Sometimes I just want to kind of like, have that, have that in my head, because the world that matters is, for a lot of consumers, for a lot of humans is what's in their head. So, I think that that's easier and more, you know, uh, enjoyable concept. And news
Right.
media in
Right.
itself is such a weird, like we're in such a weird dynamic, or teetering the lines of like objective political outlook, entertainment, and civil servitude. So it's like you kind of like are really kind of like trying to play this well. And I think that, our audiences are kind of forcing us to kind of be, one or the other, and we're doing our best to kind of like hold that line. And
Yeah.
so that's the first part. The second is just the ideology of retention in itself. And I really learned this when I was overseeing advertising retention of revenue. Was the law of exponential growth is really based on how well you are sustaining and retaining revenue, subscribers, advertisers, whatever the case may be, over a course of time. And I think sometimes in our industry, we try and focus on, we got 100 subscribers, and we focus on the 25 that we just lost, right? As opposed to, okay, well, yes, that's true. That's a very important metric to understand and understand why it's happening. But that also means that you retained 75 subscribers going into the next year. And therefore, year upon year upon year, your curve, it's like the doubling penny effect, right? Starts to kind of like look like this as far as growth, as long as you're paying attention to the folks behind you. I'm sorry, to the original, subscribers that, have been with you for a long time. So, but then layered on top of all of this, as far as, just cherry on top, icing, is that one caveat of, and it's what I was talking about with influential content, connectivity and causation with audiences. So why are you supporting this particular content platform, this content medium? People will support and read, what they believe in, and things like that. So you have to kind of, I think news media in particular, it's been a little taboo for us to kind of like really like brand the idea of the humans behind the content that gets delivered. Whereas like we've had radio personalities and TV personalities for decades, right? But I think that that's becoming more and more of our future, in which people want to know, people follow content providers.
So kind of like brand,
brand
the journalists and columnists as personalities, right?
Correct. And it's dangerous. It's a little tricky because, right, because columnists and journalists can, either leave or, get promoted or get recruited. But I have this big philosophy of like, that's the chair. The chair is this particular viewpoint or this particular content delivery, or whatever case might be. If you're a sports enthusiast, then, look, you follow this particular woman or man because, you like what they say. And therefore, for that brand of news media, is your brand like the Lakers and you're replacing a head coaching position? Or is your brand, more or less like, player centric, and therefore, so
that's interesting.
Those anomalies, but I think we'll figure it out over the course of the next couple of years.
Right. Yeah, right. And certainly, that emotional connection is something that as you build engagement, so many audience metrics, are driven by engagement. Whether it's new start acquisition or win backs, or even the length of time that you can keep a subscriber on board and keep them satisfied, hopefully at least satisfied, maybe you're even exceeding their expectations. And we certainly, for the most part, measure lifetime value, right? Lifetime value is economic measure of the value of that subscriber to that publishing organization. And I hope for everyone listening out there that they are closely tracking their lifetime value. But one of the things that I see, and we talk a lot at NSS about, is also about start yield. Is what can we do to maximize the yield on our starts? It's not a difficult calculation, and if anybody wants to know how to do the calculation, reach out to Richard or me afterwards, and we're happy to walk you through that. But particularly, something I know I've talked a lot about is new subscriber onboarding. Back in the day, when I first started in newspapers, we called it new start verification. And that in and of itself isn't really subscriber onboarding. So could you talk a little bit about, the importance of it? And, if you have any examples or any nuggets of wisdom that you can share with our audience, about, what you've experimented with, where you've succeeded, where you failed with new subscriber onboarding, Richard.
Sure. I think that it's important to kind of like, pay attention to a few different factors. One, seasonality and what's going on in content in a given time. Um, Obviously, that has a tendency to either inflate or deflate your overall, like, onboarding volume anyway. Bridging the connectivity between, like, what they need to do, have benefits, features, and then also to just natural ingratiation, right? Ingratiating. So, like, you want to make sure that, the subscriber not only knows that you're extremely grateful for that subscription, because you are, like they are literally that engine that kind of helps you drive your vessel, but also
Right.
too,
Right.
that there's some
Yeah. Do we
immediate
say thank you?
yeah,
Do we
yeah,
say
for sure.
congratulations? Do we say thank you? Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just, I agree. And then I think that immediate connectivity with like, hey, look, here's what you're going to be able to see soon. Here's what's going on. I think that the thing that always gets missed in onboarding is making someone, a human, feel as though they're connected to a community. Your content in essence is a community of people. I'm sorry, your platform is a nucleus to generate a community of people. And if you really think about it, like, okay, well, how would you ingratiate somebody into a community? You want them to feel warm and welcome and appreciated for what they're doing, and just appreciated for why, and give them context as to why they're there. So like, you definitely want to hit home on that, especially within the first a few days, but also too just in your onboarding process. I don't care if it's 30 or 60 days, whatever the case might be. And you can be diligent about it. Like, you can be very like, hey, look, we're gonna show you, hey man, like, thank you so much. It's your 10th time, like, accessing our app, or hey, look, we really appreciate, you're doing this. It just, I wanted to remind you of that, like, what we do here is so important to our cause or our community or whatever the case might be, and therefore you're a part of that. And you really have to kind of like build that, and not to mention you have to like deliver upon what you promised. So if the content is going to be, if I'm expecting something, and then and understand too, not every subscriber is like, always at that point of ready to convert. So you want to pay attention to, I don't know, a lot of organizations have both annual and monthly subscriptions. You want to, monthly subscription is different, so you want to make sure that you're paying attention to that, because somebody who's mid-range engaged might be, potentially an annual subscriber at some point, or whatever. Maybe you don't give, monthly subscriptions, and maybe you only focus on annual. That's totally fine too. So, but I think that, kind of going through that is a very big deal, and just natural empathy, understanding where people are, not being too complex. And I think that being able to talk with people and not at people, above people, or below people. Just, I'm having a conversation with you, Lon. This is me. This is real. Humans, we're very smart. Or we can digest, and we can, and not only can we digest, but we can also too, we can read energy. We know, we know what we need to know. But sometimes talking at me just makes me feel more connected to you, and not necessarily so, so it's a little bit of combination of all that. However you want to kind of like piece that together. I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
there's one other thing I do want to pay.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yep.
And because I got back into the inflation of volumes, paying attention to verifiable subscriptions. I don't care if you have like a tax affirmation, or some type of like, hey, look, this is who this person is, because you can also too kind of like, make sure that your journeys have very appropriate touch points that are also for the health of the organization, and not necessarily constantly cannibalizing, your revenue, if you're running promotions to people who are, stuff like that. You just want to be very, very cautious of what it is. So I would always say just keep it simple. Not to get too outside of your bubble, but just kind of keep it in the pocket a little bit.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and certainly, the idea has been researched over the years about, the simplicity and even including personalization in your marketing, especially on the retention side. And we wholeheartedly agree that we have customers, we have data on our customers, either from past transactions, what would that be, zero party data. And, so we're finding on the NSS side of things that we do help our customers leverage that data and do more with it. For example, when we're winning back subscribers, whether it's through email marketing, outbound telemarketing, you name it, we should know the best rate and optimal rates to win that customer back on, and not take them all the way back to $1.99 for 6 months. But I see a lot of $1.99 for 6-month offers out there still, and I agree with you, Richard. We just need to do a better job communicating with our customers and being real with them. I mean, if you're my friend, my family member, I know a lot about you, and that's where that conversation should begin. Without a doubt. So let's talk about advice for a second. You've been around the block, long, wonderful career. So when you brought up a rookie audience professional in the past, what's your favorite thing to say, or what's been your favorite advice to give to that up and coming rookie audience professional, Richard?
Build a retention equation. And I think that's kind of, so build a scorecard too, like a weekly kind of cadence as to like, key metrics that are integral to, engagement, retention, understand who's in grades, at any given time, understand who's in, different, sectors within that journey. Understand, who's, anything from, credit card failure to, you have to kind of like know key metrics that either could be detrimental in the immediacy of like churn overall, or like be detrimental long term when it comes to just, losing subscribers. And I think that a combination, being able to kind of keep your pulse on all of these, like important, kind of like a body, like you have to kind of like know everything. And if you don't pay attention to one part of a body or an affected area or something like that, it could spread.
Yeah.
So, you definitely want to kind of, I think I did an article, I called it, take care of your elephant, right? If your elephant, elephants can't eat if they don't have a trunk. So like, if you're not paying attention to the entire thing, that, the trunk of an elephant is very important. So if you're not paying attention to both the entire thing and also to those niche focuses and initiatives, you'll starve your elephant, so to speak.
Right.
So,
Right.
but I think that the retention equation of knowing, okay, here's how many people I've renewed over a course of time. Here's how many people are still active over a course of time. Here's who have I renewed versus, acquisition, new acquisition over a course of time. Here's how I renewed over that. Really what you're trying to say is that, are you at a pace where your renewal is kind of, because, you're always going to have up and downs as far as like high moments in acquisition. You want to have a measurement as to how you're performing short and long term against that new acquisition number for retention. Because if you're only looking at it a year, a year at a time or something like that, you're not paying attention to the people. If you're in year 3, make sure you pay attention to your people in year 1 too. So that's kind of that law.
That's great advice. That's great advice. We get a lot of requests, as you might imagine. Sometimes folks frantic saying, "Oh my gosh, Lon, I need more starts. How can you help me? We've got to crank up the start pressure." And then sometimes I just turn around and say, "Well, is it more starts you need, or do you really need fewer stops? Do you need more engagement? Do you need to hang on to those folks, like you said, that you started in year 1 and year 2, if you're already out on year 3?" So I think that's great advice to, have a system or a matrix by which you can judge the health of your patient or your elephant, as you put it. And because little things, little problems, a head cold, right? A scratch can turn into an infection, right?
Right.
And we don't want to let our publishing patient develop an infection, because that's where the nasty stuff, really sets in. So now, how about you? What's the best advice you ever received in your professional career?
Lon, I have received so much feedback and insight over my I think it's going to sound a little weird. It's going to sound a lot of 2 things. One, don't build things just for this quarter, build them for generations, right? If you're going to make something, be somewhat solitude in your focus, make sure that it's something that's sustainable through a course of time, and that inevitably other people can take, adapt, build from, and grow from too. Just like, just like anything, you want to build something that's strong and that lasts, and that, is collaborative amongst different, departments or entities within your organization, that people are like, yeah, this is good, and even if we took it in the future, the premise of this is good. And then I think the other thing, and I'm actually kind of hating that I'm saying this, but I had a leader tell me once, Richard, I'm never going to tell you what to do, but it better be the right answer. It
Wow.
was, yeah, it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek moment, but it was always this thing that kind of, to this day when I'm doing things, it's kind of like, it puts you in perspective of like always wanting to make sure that you're thorough and that you're committed to a concept, an idea, and a strategy. It's okay to acknowledge that you don't always know everything. It's okay to sometimes go off a gut hunt, but you need to validate a lot of things with data and research and stuff like that. So, we live in a weird time. Well, it's not weird. It's a good time, I think, a healthy time where, experimenting with concepts and processes and strategies is good, and is open and is welcome. So, but come correct and come strong. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. It's okay. But and you should be in an organization where it's okay to, hey, look, we tried something, it didn't work. But yeah, it's always kind of, that always kind of put in my head, like always pay attention to not just your silo, but everything, and understand how money flows throughout your organization. And just be steady in your approach.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, Richard, we are nearly out of time. I think we could go on for hours more, but we do have to cut it off here. In case anyone listening would like to get a hold of you, maybe have a direct conversation with you, or talk about some of these KPIs that you're saying the rookies or maybe even the veterans out there need to track a little closer, what would be the best way for anyone listening to get a hold of you, Richard?
Sure. You can either just go to my site at richardebrown.co. You can reach me on LinkedIn. I'm on there as well. So yeah, those are kind of like two big ones. I also have a YouTube channel, and Richard Brown News Media Tech Consulting. So if you guys need anything, just just reach out those two ways.
Absolutely. Well, this has been great. So this has been the NSS Insights podcast with our guest Richard Brown and your host Lon Haenel. And if you're listening, you don't know anything about NSS, we're heavy into retention, automating subscription funnels, subscription journeys, and building community and helping you manage those KPIs much, much better, or at least taking a load off from what you're currently doing. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. But most of all, thank you, Richard, for joining us. I know I've learned a lot in the last half an hour, and we'd love to have you back on, but thanks for stopping by, and we'll talk to you soon, everybody. Take care.